In the unforgiving world of competitive horse racing, a wealthy ranch owner orders a blind foal to be abandoned in the desert. A compassionate young boy discovers the struggling animal, nurses it back to health, and through years of dedication, transforms it into something extraordinary. The shocking truth about this horse's destiny will leave the world stunned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Beneath the scorching Arizona sun, the sprawling desert wind, French stood as a testament to Alexander Sterling's ruthless pursuit of perfection. The ranch, with its state-of-the-art facilities and championship bloodlines, had produced more Kentucky Derby winners than any other breeding operation in the Southwest. Sterling, a former Wall Street trader turned horse breeder, approached his thoroughbreds the same way he had handled his stock portfolio, analyzing return on investment with cold, calculating precision. That sweltering morning in July, as the temperature already climbed past 90 degrees before breakfast, Sterling sat in his climate-controlled office reviewing breeding charts and race statistics. His pressed white shirt remained crisp despite the heat, his silver hair immaculately styled, a man who demanded control over every detail of his environment. "Mr. Sterling," his stable manager, Rodriguez, burst through the door without knocking. "It's Starlight's Legacy, sir. She's gone into labor 3 weeks early." Sterling's jaw clenched at the interruption, but his eyes sparked with interest. Starlight's Legacy was his prized broodmare, purchased for $4.02 million at auction. Her bloodline traced back to Triple Crown winners, and this foal, sired by his champion stallion Desert King, represented the culmination of years of careful breeding. "Get Dr. Harrison there immediately," Sterling ordered, rising from his leather chair. "This foal is worth millions before it even takes its first breath." The breeding barn hummed with tension as Sterling arrived. Dr. Harrison, the most expensive equine veterinarian in 3 states, directed a team of assistants with practiced efficiency. Starlight's Legacy lay on her side, her flanks heaving with each contraction. Sterling stood at the barn entrance, his presence casting a long shadow across the sawdust floor. "The foal's position is correct," Dr. Harrison announced, her voice steady despite the pressure of Sterling's scrutiny. "But the early labor is concerning. We need to monitor this carefully." Minutes stretched into hours as the mare labored. Sterling paced the length of the barn, checking his Patek Philippe watch with growing impatience. Finally, a wet nose emerged, followed by spindly legs and a sleek body. The foal, a colt with a coat so dark it seemed to absorb the light, lay trembling in the straw. "A beautiful specimen," Dr. Harrison murmured, conducting her initial examination. "Strong bone structure, excellent conformation." Her voice trailed off as she moved to check the colt's eyes. She frowned, reaching for a small light in her medical kit. Sterling stepped closer, his own frown deepening at the doctor's sudden silence. "Well?" he demanded. "What is it?" Dr. Harrison straightened slowly, her expression grave. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry. The colt appears to be blind. Both eyes show severe abnormalities, likely a genetic defect. He'll never be able to see." "Dum!" The words fell like stones in the quiet barn. Sterling's face hardened, his eyes turning to ice as he stared at the foal struggling to stand on wobbling legs. The colt, unaware of the judgment being passed, nuzzled against his mother's warm side. "Blind?" Sterling spat the word like a curse. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Yes, sir. The condition is irreversible." while he could live a comfortable life with proper care. A comfortable life. Sterling cut her off with a harsh laugh. This isn't a petting zoo, Doctor. This is a business. That colt was meant to be a champion racehorse, not a charity case. He turned to Rodriguez, who stood nervously in the shadows. Get rid of it. Sir? Rodriguez's voice wavered. What do you mean? Take it out to Dead Man's Canyon and leave it there. Nature can deal with it. Sterling's tone left no room for argument. I won't waste resources on a defective animal. But, sir, that's 15 miles into the desert. In this heat. Did I stutter, Rodriguez? Sterling's voice dropped dangerously low. Either follow my orders or clear out your locker. Your choice. Rodriguez's shoulders slumped in defeat. Yes, sir. I'll take care of it. As Sterling strode from the barn, Dr. Harrison called after him. This isn't right. That foal deserves a chance. Sterling paused in the doorway, sunlight glinting off his expensive watch. Doctor, I didn't build this empire by giving chances to lost causes. Send me your bill, minus today's commentary on ethics. With that, he was gone, leaving behind a wake of stunned silence. Rodriguez waited until nightfall, unable to carry out the cruel task under the judging eye of the sun. He gently loaded the colt into a trailer, his heart heavy as Starlight's Legacy's distressed whinnies echoed through the barn. The mare seemed to know she would never see her baby again. The drive to Dead Man's Canyon felt like a funeral procession. Rodriguez chose a spot near a small water seep, hoping against hope that the foal might somehow survive. He couldn't bring himself to leave it in the open desert as Sterling had ordered. As he unloaded the trembling colt, he whispered a quiet prayer in Spanish, asking forgiveness for his part in this cruelty. Miles away, in a modest double-wide trailer on the outskirts of town, 11-year-old Tommy Martinez sat on his worn front porch, drawing horses in his sketchbook. The boy's passion for horses had survived despite his family's inability to afford riding lessons, much less a horse of their own. His father worked as a maintenance man at the local school. His mother, cleaning houses to make ends meet. But Tommy never stopped dreaming. Every morning before school, he would walk 2 miles to visit old Joe, a retired ranch hand who maintained a small stable of rescued horses. Joe had taught Tommy everything he knew about horsemanship, recognizing a natural talent in the boy that transcended his humble circumstances. That night, as Tommy lay in bed, listening to coyotes howl in the distance, he had no way of knowing that destiny was galloping toward him on unsteady legs, guided by the same stars that had witnessed a wealthy man's cruelty and a stable hand's reluctant compliance. Morning brought with it an unseasonable coolness, a rare gift in the Arizona desert. Tommy rose early, as he always did, to help old Joe with the morning feeding before school. His mother was already gone, having left for her first cleaning job of the day, but she'd left him a note with a peanut butter sandwich and an "I love you" that made him smile. As Tommy walked the familiar dirt road to old Joe's place, he noticed something different about the morning. The coyotes were more vocal than usual, their yips and howls carrying an urgency that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Old Joe had taught him to pay attention to such things. When the desert spoke, wise men listened. Trusting his instincts, Tommy veered off his usual path, following the sound of the coyotes. The rough trail led him toward Dead Man's Canyon, a place his mother had strictly forbidden him to go. But something pulled him forward, each step feeling more significant than the last. The sun had barely begun to paint the sky when Tommy heard it, a weak whinny that didn't belong among the desert's morning sounds. His heart began to race as he scrambled over rocks, following the sound until he crested a small rise and saw something that stopped him in his tracks. There, trembling in the growing light, stood a coal-black foal. Its coat was caked with dust, its legs barely supporting its weight as it stood cornered by 3 circling coyotes. The predators had been testing the foal's defenses, looking for an opening, but something about their would-be prey confused them. The foal didn't look at them directly, didn't track their movements like other prey animals would. Without thinking, Tommy grabbed rocks from the ground and began hurling them at the coyotes, his voice rising in a shout that echoed off the canyon walls. "Get away from him! Leave him alone!" The coyotes scattered, more from surprise than fear, but Tommy knew they wouldn't stay away for long. He approached the foal slowly, his heart breaking as he realized the truth. The animal's unseeing eyes stared past him, clouded and unresponsive. "You're blind," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Who would leave you out here like this?" The foal flinched at his voice, but didn't run. Tommy remembered what old Joe had taught him about approaching nervous horses. He began to hum softly, an old Spanish lullaby his grandmother used to sing, and held out his hand, letting the foal catch his scent. Slowly, cautiously, the foal's velvet nose touched his palm. The contact sent a jolt through Tommy's heart, a connection that felt like destiny. He knew in that moment that his life had changed forever. Tommy knew he couldn't leave the foal alone in the desert, but getting him to safety would be no simple task. The young boy stripped off his school shirt, leaving only his undershirt, and carefully approached the trembling animal. "I promise, I won't hurt you," he whispered, using the shirt as a makeshift halter, "but we need to get you somewhere safe." The walk to old Joe's place was slow and careful. Every step was a negotiation, every obstacle a challenge. Tommy talked constantly, letting his voice guide the foal forward. When they finally arrived at the small stable, old Joe was already outside, his weathered face creasing with concern as he watched their approach. "Sweet Mother of Mercy," the old rancher breathed, taking in the sight of the dust-covered boy, leading the equally dusty foal. "Tommy, what in heaven's name have you gotten yourself into?" Tommy explained everything, his words tumbling out in a rush of excitement and worry. Old Joe listened carefully, his expression growing darker as he examined the abandoned foal. "This here's a thoroughbred," he said finally, running his calloused hands along the colt's legs. "Expensive breeding, too. Somebody wanted this little fellow gone." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "But why?" Tommy demanded, his young face fierce with indignation. "Just because he's blind?" Old Joe sighed, settling onto a hay bale. "World's full of hard people, son. Folks who measure worth in dollars and cents instead of heart and spirit." He studied Tommy's determined expression. "You know, taking this on won't be easy, right? A blind horse needs special care, special training. Your folks barely make ends meet as it is." "I'll work," Tommy declared without hesitation. "I'll clean stalls, groom horses, whatever you need. Just please help me save him." Old Joe was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this proper. First thing's getting him checked by a vet. I know one who owes me a favor, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's got a soft spot for lost causes like us." Dr. Chen arrived that afternoon, her ancient pickup truck rattling up the dirt road. She was younger than Tommy expected, with kind eyes and a gentle touch that immediately put the foal at ease. Her examination was thorough, her findings both encouraging and challenging. "He's definitely blind," she confirmed, "but otherwise healthy. Good bone structure, strong heart, no signs of other congenital issues. Whoever bred him knew what they were doing." She paused, her expression thoughtful. This level of breeding. Tommy. This colt almost certainly came from Desert Wind Ranch. Alexander Sterling's operation. Old Joe muttered something under his breath that made Dr. Chen raise her eyebrows. "Sterling's got a reputation," she explained to Tommy. "Breeds champions, but he's ruthless about culling anything he considers imperfect." Tommy's hands clenched into fists. "Well, he was wrong about this one. I'm going to prove it." Dr. Chen smiled, but her eyes were serious. "It won't be easy. A blind horse needs constant attention, specialized training. He'll never be able to compete in regular races or shows." "I don't care about competitions," Tommy insisted. "I just want to give him a chance." The vet nodded, impressed by the boy's determination. "Then let's start with the basics. He needs a name." Tommy studied the colt, watching how his dark coat seemed to absorb the sunlight. Despite his blindness, there was a quiet dignity in the way he held himself, an inner strength waiting to be discovered. Shadow, Tommy decided, because even in darkness he finds his way. The next challenge was telling his parents. Tommy's mother cried when she learned where he'd been instead of going to school. His father, usually quiet and reserved, paced their small living room with worried steps. "Mi hijo," his mother began, "your heart is good, but we can barely afford to feed ourselves. A horse, and one that needs special care?" "I've got it figured out," Tommy rushed to explain. "Old Joe said I can work at his stable. Dr. Chen's helping with the medical stuff. Shadow can stay in the empty stall at Joe's place. Please, Mom, Dad, I've never asked for anything like this before." His parents exchanged looks, the silent communication of people who had weathered many storms together. Finally, his father spoke. "You understand this is your responsibility? Your grades cannot suffer. Your chores still need doing." "Yes, sir," Tommy nodded vigorously. "I promise." "Then we will find a way," his father said softly. "But Tommy, remember that this animal depends on you now. There is no quitting when things get hard." The reality of that responsibility hit Tommy full force the next morning. Before dawn, he was at the stable, learning from old Joe how to care for a blind horse. Every task required extra patience, extra care. Shadow couldn't see approaching danger or find his water bucket on his own. He spooked at unexpected sounds and needed constant reassurance. "The trick," old Joe explained, "is to help him build confidence without making him dependent. We need to teach him to use his other senses, hearing, smell, touch. He needs to learn to trust his own abilities." They started with simple things. Tommy created patterns in Shadow's daily routine, using different vocal cues for different activities. Walk on meant moving forward. Easy meant slow down. Step meant lifting his feet over obstacles. Every command was accompanied by a gentle touch, building a language between boy and horse that transcended sight. Dr. Chen visited regularly, amazed by Shadow's progress. "He's developing what we call spatial memory," she explained one afternoon, watching Tommy lead Shadow through a series of poles laid on the ground. "He's creating a mental map of his environment. The consistency of your training is helping him build confidence. But it wasn't all smooth progress. There were setbacks, times when Shadow's fear overwhelmed his trust, when he would freeze or panic. One particularly challenging day, after Shadow had crashed into a fence during a simple leading exercise, Tommy sat in the dirt, crying with frustration. Old Joe found him there, and instead of offering immediate comfort, settled down beside him with a grunt. "You know why I work with rescued horses?" he asked quietly. Tommy shook his head, wiping his eyes. "Because they teach us more about ourselves than we ever teach them. Every horse carries the story of their past, the good and the bad, but they also carry the potential for transformation. Shadow here, he's not just learning to navigate without sight. He's learning to trust again, to believe in himself, and you're learning right alongside him." The old rancher's words struck deep. Tommy realized that his work with Shadow wasn't just about training a horse. It was about proving that limitations didn't define potential. Every small victory, every moment of progress was a testament to the power of patience and perseverance. As weeks passed, Tommy developed innovative training methods. He created texture paths in Shadow's paddock, gravel, sand, packed earth, to help him identify different areas. He hung wind chimes at key points, creating audio landmarks. Most importantly, he spent countless hours just being with Shadow, talking to him, grooming him, building a bond that grew stronger each day. Word began to spread about the blind colt and the dedicated young boy who was defying conventional wisdom about what was possible. Local horse people would stop by Old Joe's place, curious to see for themselves. Some offered advice, others skepticism, but Tommy remained focused on his goal, helping Shadow live his best life. One visitor, however, changed everything. Martha Cervantes, a retired special education teacher who had worked with visually impaired children, watched Tommy work with Shadow one afternoon. She saw how the boy instinctively understood the need to build confidence through small successes, how he created a supportive environment that encouraged independence. "You know," she said to Old Joe, "there's a growing field called equine therapy. Horses helping people with disabilities. But I've never seen anything quite like this. A blind horse learning to navigate the world so successfully. This could be something special." Old Joe stroked his chin thoughtfully. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Martha nodded. "If Tommy and Shadow can develop their methods further, they could help others understand that disability doesn't mean inability. Their story could inspire people to look past limitations and see potential." That evening, as Tommy prepared to head home, Old Joe shared Martha's observations. "You've got something unique here, son. What you're doing with Shadow, it's not just about training a horse. You're showing people what's possible when you believe in someone everyone else gave up on." Tommy thought about this as he walked home in the gathering dusk. Above him, the first stars were appearing, the same stars that had witnessed Shadow's abandonment, now shining down on his transformation. In the distance, coyotes called, the very danger Shadow had faced now, just another night sound he had learned to accept without fear. The boy's heart swelled with purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth. But tonight, he knew with certainty that he and Shadow were on the right path, their journey together only beginning to unfold. As autumn painted the desert in subtle shades of gold and amber, Tommy's work with Shadow took an unexpected turn. Martha Cervantes, the retired special education teacher, had been observing their progress and approached Tommy with an innovative idea. She arrived one morning carrying a bag full of curious items, small bells, textured fabrics, and what looked like modified recreational equipment. "Tommy," she said, her eyes bright with excitement, "I've been thinking about how we might expand Shadow's training. In my years of teaching visually impaired children, I learned that the key is to create a multi-sensory experience. What if we applied those same principles to Shadow's development?" The concept sparked Tommy's imagination. Together with Martha, he began developing a unique training system that would revolutionize their approach. They created a series of sensory stations around Shadow's paddock, each designed to strengthen a different aspect of his awareness. At one station, they hung different-sized bells that created distinct musical notes. "Each sound can represent a different command or direction," Martha explained. "It's like creating a new language that Shadow can understand through hearing alone." Tommy spent hours working with these new tools, amazed at how quickly Shadow adapted. The horse learned to associate specific bell tones with different actions. A high note meant turn right, a low tone turn left. A sequence of chimes indicated stop. It was as if they were composing a symphony of movement together. Dr. Chen continued her regular visits, documenting Shadow's progress with growing enthusiasm. "What you're doing here is groundbreaking," she told Tommy one afternoon. "I've never seen anything like it. You're not just working around Shadow's blindness, you're helping him develop new ways of understanding his environment." The breakthrough came during a particularly challenging training session. Tommy had set up an obstacle course using different textured mats, rubber, carpet, straw, each with its own distinct feel under Shadow's hooves. As they worked through the course, Tommy noticed something remarkable. Shadow was starting to anticipate the changes in texture before stepping onto them. "He's creating a cognitive map," Martha exclaimed, watching from the fence. "He's not just memorizing the course, he's actually building a mental picture of his environment through touch and sound." Old Joe, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "You know what this reminds me of? Natural horsemanship, working with the horse's instincts instead of against them. But you're taking it to a whole new level, boy." Tommy's innovation didn't stop there. He began incorporating aromatherapy into their training, placing different scented markers at key points around the paddock. Lavender meant water source, mint indicated rest area, and sage marked exercise space. Shadow learned to navigate his world through this complex web of sensory information, growing more confident with each passing day. Word of their unconventional methods spread through the local equestrian community. One afternoon, a group of therapy riding instructors from a nearby rehabilitation center visited to observe their training sessions. Among them was Daniel Cooper, a Paralympic equestrian who had lost his sight in a military accident. "This is incredible," Daniel said, his hand resting on the fence as he listened to Tommy work with Shadow. "You're not treating his blindness as a disability. You're treating it as an opportunity to develop other strengths." Daniel's visit opened new doors of possibility. He shared his own experiences of riding after losing his sight, offering insights that helped Tommy refine his training methods. "It's about trust," Daniel explained. "When you can't see, you have to believe in your partner completely. That's what you and Shadow have built. Absolute trust." The Paralympic rider's words resonated deeply with Tommy. He began to understand that their work was about more than just teaching a blind horse to navigate. It was about demonstrating the extraordinary potential that exists when limitations are viewed as challenges to overcome rather than insurmountable obstacles. Martha helped Tommy document their training methods, creating detailed notes and diagrams that could potentially help others working with visually impaired animals. "What you're developing here could change lives," she told him. "Not just for horses, but for people too. You're showing that disability doesn't have to mean limitation." As Shadow's confidence grew, so did the complexity of their training exercises. Tommy designed increasingly challenging obstacle courses, incorporating different elevations, textures, and sound cues. The biggest surprise came when Shadow began showing an aptitude for rhythmic movement, responding to music played during their training sessions with an almost dance-like quality. "It's like he can feel the vibrations through the ground," Dr. Chen observed, watching Shadow move in perfect time to a slow country ballad. "His other senses have become so acute that he's perceiving things we might not even notice." One morning, as Tommy arrived for their daily training session, he found old Joe deep in conversation with a woman he didn't recognize. She introduced herself as Rebecca Torres, a documentary filmmaker who specialized in stories about animal-human connections. "I heard about what you're doing here," she explained, her eyes bright with interest. "This isn't just a story about training a blind horse. It's about breaking down barriers, challenging assumptions. Would you be interested in letting me document your work?" Tommy looked at old Joe, who nodded encouragingly. "Sometimes," the old rancher said, "the best way to help others is to share your journey. What you and Shadow have accomplished could inspire people facing their own challenges." The decision to participate in the documentary added a new dimension to their daily routine. Rebecca's camera captured not just the successes, but the setbacks too. The moments of frustration, the failed attempts, the process of learning from mistakes and trying again. "This is what people need to see," Rebecca said, reviewing footage of Tommy patiently working through a particularly difficult training session. "It's not about instant success. It's about persistence, about getting up after you fall and trying again." The filming process made Tommy more aware of articulating their methods. He found himself explaining techniques that had become second nature, breaking down complex processes into simple steps that others could understand and replicate. "When Shadow gets nervous," he explained to the camera, "I don't just tell him it's okay. I help him explore what's causing his fear. We touch it, smell it, listen to it. We turn the unknown into something familiar." Uli, the documentary crew, captured a powerful moment when a group of visually impaired children visited the stable. Tommy guided each child's hands as they touched Shadow, explaining how the horse had learned to navigate his world without sight. "He's just like us," one little girl exclaimed, her face lighting up as Shadow gently nuzzled her hand. "He can't see, but he knows exactly where he's going." The children's visit sparked another idea. Tommy began working with Martha to develop a program that would bring together visually impaired children and Shadow. The horse's gentle nature and unique way of experiencing the world made him the perfect ambassador for showing that different abilities didn't mean disabilities. "What you're creating here," Martha told Tommy one evening as they reviewed their progress, "is more than just a training program. You're building a bridge between worlds, helping people understand that there are many ways to perceive and interact with the world around us." As autumn deepened into winter, Tommy and Shadow's story began to reach beyond their small desert community. The documentary footage, shared on social media, attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Rehabilitation centers expressed interest in their sensory training methods. Veterinary schools requested detailed documentation of their techniques. But for Tommy, the most meaningful moments remained the quiet ones. Early mornings when it was just him and Shadow, working together in the cool desert air, each small victory a testament to their shared journey of discovery and growth. In those moments, he understood that their story was about more than overcoming blindness. It was about seeing the world in a completely new way. One evening, as Tommy prepared to head home after a long training session, he paused to watch Shadow, moving confidently around his paddock. The horse that had once trembled in fear now navigated his world with grace and assurance, each step a demonstration of what was possible when someone believed in your potential. "You know what, Shadow?" Tommy said softly, reaching out to stroke the horse's velvet nose. "Sometimes the biggest victories aren't the ones everyone sees. They're the moments when you realize that what others saw as impossible was just waiting for someone to prove them wrong." The documentary about Tommy and Shadow had caught the attention of Dr. Michael Anderson, a renowned specialist in equine behavior from the University of Arizona. His arrival at Old Joe's stable one crisp winter morning marked a turning point in their journey. Dr. Anderson had pioneered research in horse cognition and sensory development, but even he was unprepared for what he witnessed. "This is extraordinary," he remarked, watching Tommy guide Shadow through their morning routine. "You've essentially created a new paradigm for working with visually impaired animals. Have you considered the broader implications of your methods?" Tommy looked puzzled. "Broader implications?" Dr. Anderson's eyes lit up with excitement. "Your training system could revolutionize how we work with all kinds of special needs animals. The sensory integration, the communication techniques, it's groundbreaking. Would you be interested in participating in a research study?" The prospect both thrilled and intimidated Tommy. A university study meant their methods would be scrutinized, documented, and potentially shared with the world. It also meant increased pressure and attention, something neither he nor Shadow had experienced before. "What would it involve?" Old Joe asked, protective as always of his young protege. "And the special horse?" Dr. Anderson outlined his proposal. The study would document their training methods in scientific detail, analyzing how Shadow's other senses had developed to compensate for his blindness. They would use specialized equipment to measure his responses to different stimuli and track his spatial awareness. "But here's what makes this truly unique," Dr. Anderson explained. "We want to study not just Shadow's development, but the impact of your program on the children who visit. The therapeutic potential is enormous." Tommy thought about the visually impaired children who had connected so deeply with Shadow. He remembered their joy in discovering that a horse could navigate the world so successfully without sight. "If it could help others," he said slowly, "then we should do it." The study began immediately. The university team set up sophisticated monitoring equipment around Shadow's paddock. They installed sensors to track his movements, recorded his responses to different sounds and textures, and measured his stress levels during various activities. But the most fascinating discoveries came from the children's interactions with Shadow. Dr. Anderson's team documented remarkable improvements in the confidence and spatial awareness of visually impaired children who participated in their program. The children who worked with Shadow showed increased willingness to explore their environment and try new things. "It's called mirror therapy," Dr. Anderson explained to Tommy. When these children see Shadow moving confidently despite his blindness, it changes their perception of their own capabilities. You're not just training a horse, you're changing lives. The research project brought new challenges and opportunities. Tommy had to learn to articulate his instinctive understanding of Shadow's needs in scientific terms. He worked with speech therapists to develop precise language for describing their training methods, making them accessible to others who might want to implement similar programs. One day, a group of veterans from the local VA hospital visited the stable. Among them was James Mitchell, a former Army Ranger who had lost his sight in combat. James stood silently as Tommy explained their training methods, but his expression changed when Shadow approached him unprompted. "He knows," James said softly, reaching out to touch the horse. "Somehow he knows I can't see either." That interaction led to a new dimension of their program. Working with the VA hospital, they began offering sessions specifically for veterans with visual impairments. Shadow's calm presence and unique way of navigating the world resonated deeply with these warriors who were learning to adapt to life without sight. "In the military, we talk about adapting and overcoming," James told Tommy during one session. "But watching Shadow, working with him, it's teaching us that adaptation isn't about fighting against limitations. It's about finding new ways to thrive." The university study also attracted attention from unexpected quarters. A team of engineers from a technology company visited, intrigued by Tommy's sensory-based training system. They saw potential applications for developing new assistive technologies for the visually impaired. "The way you've mapped Shadow's environment using sound and texture cues," one engineer explained, "it's similar to how we're trying to develop navigation systems for the blind. But you've done it organically, intuitively. There's a lot we can learn from your approach." As winter mellowed into spring, Tommy's life had transformed in ways he never could have imagined. His grades had improved. The discipline required for Shadow's training had spilled over into his studies. His teachers noticed a new maturity in him, a deeper understanding of responsibility and commitment. But success brought its own challenges. The increasing demands on their time and resources stretched the modest facilities at Old Joe's stable to their limits. More families were reaching out, hoping to participate in their program. The small paddock that had seemed adequate for one blind horse now felt cramped with the addition of therapy sessions and research activities. One evening, as Tommy helped Old Joe with the evening feeding, the old rancher broached a difficult subject. "Son, we need to talk about the future. This program you've built, it's outgrowing us. We need to think about finding a bigger facility, maybe setting up a proper therapeutic riding center." The suggestion hit Tommy hard. The thought of moving Shadow from the only stable he'd known since his rescue felt wrong. This place, with its familiar sounds and smells, was their sanctuary, but he couldn't deny the truth in Old Joe's words. That night, unable to sleep, Tommy sat on his front porch, sketching ideas for a proper therapeutic riding facility in his notebook. He imagined bigger paddocks with carefully designed sensory trails, indoor areas for working during extreme weather, comfortable spaces for families to gather and learn. His mother found him there, still drawing as the sun rose. She studied his sketches, her eyes filling with tears of pride. "Mi hijo," she said softly, "you started by saving one horse, and now look. You're building dreams for so many others." The next day, during a research session, Dr. Anderson noticed Tommy's preoccupation. When Tommy shared his concerns about needing to expand, the professor's face lit up. "The university has been looking for community outreach projects," he said. "What if we could help you establish a proper therapeutic riding center? We could apply for grants, create a partnership between the university and your program." The possibility was both exciting and daunting. It would mean moving beyond the comfortable familiarity of old Joe's stable, taking on greater responsibilities, becoming something more formal than just a boy and his horse helping others. "It's scary," Tommy admitted to Shadow that evening, brushing the horse's gleaming coat. "Everything's changing so fast. Sometimes I wonder if we're ready for all this." As if in response, Shadow gently butted his head against Tommy's chest, a gesture that had become his way of showing trust and affection. Tommy smiled, understanding the message. They had already overcome so much together. Change was just another challenge to face, another opportunity to grow. Later that week, during a therapy session with the veterans group, James Mitchell said something that helped crystallize Tommy's thoughts about the future. "You know what makes this program special?" he asked. "It's not just about learning to cope with blindness. It's about discovering that limitations don't define us. Shadow showed me that. Now you need to show more people." Tommy realized that their journey had never been just about him and Shadow. From the moment he'd found that trembling foal in the desert, they had been part of something larger, a story about the transformative power of believing in possibilities rather than focusing on limitations. As spring flowers began to bloom in the desert, Tommy worked with Dr. Anderson and Old Joe to develop plans for the new facility. They would call it Shadow's Path, a place where people could discover their own strength through connection with these extraordinary animals. "You know," Old Joe said one evening, watching Tommy work with Shadow, "when you first brought that blind foal here, I thought we were just saving one horse. But look what you've created. Hope, healing, new possibilities, sometimes the biggest. Dreams start with the smallest acts of kindness." Tommy nodded, understanding that their story was still unfolding. Each day brought new challenges, new opportunities to learn and grow. But with Shadow by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. They had already proven that the impossible was just waiting to be proven possible. The news about Shadow's Path spread quickly through the equestrian community. One morning, as Tommy arrived at the stable, he found an unexpected visitor waiting. Lisa Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter and a successful equine photographer, had traveled from New York to document their story for a prestigious magazine. "There's something magical happening here," Lisa explained, adjusting her camera as she watched Tommy work with Shadow. "The way you two move together, it's like watching a dance. You're not just working around his blindness, you're creating something entirely new." As Lisa photographed their morning session, she captured moments that told their story in ways words couldn't. Shadow responding to Tommy's lightest touch, their synchronized movements through complex patterns, the absolute trust between boy and horse. But it was a chance photograph that would change everything. In one image, Shadow was captured mid-stride, his head lifted proudly, moving with perfect precision through an obstacle course. The photograph showed no hint of his blindness, just the powerful grace of a horse in perfect harmony with his environment. When Lisa showed it to Tommy, his eyes widened in recognition. "Wait," he said, studying the image. "Something about his markings, his conformation." He rushed to get the old racing magazines he'd been studying, comparing the photo to images of champion thoroughbreds. The resemblance was unmistakable. Dr. Chen arrived later that day, and Tommy shared his discovery. "Look at these bloodlines," he said excitedly, spreading out the magazines. "Shadow's markings match exactly with Starlight's Legacy's bloodline. He's not just any thoroughbred, he's from one of the most prestigious racing lines in the country." The revelation sparked a thorough investigation. Dr. Chen made some calls, and soon the truth emerged. Shadow was indeed born at Desert Wind Ranch, sired by their champion stallion Desert King. The timing, the lineage, everything matched. "Alexander Sterling," Dr. Chen said quietly, naming the wealthy ranch owner who had ordered Shadow abandoned. "He's famous in racing circles, but not always for the right reasons. His pursuit of perfection has led to some questionable decisions." The discovery stirred mixed emotions in Tommy. Part of him was angry at the man who had so callously discarded Shadow, but another part felt a strange sense of validation. They had proven that worth couldn't be measured by conventional standards. The magazine article, when published, caused a sensation in the equestrian world. Lisa's photographs, especially the one showing Shadow's perfect form, challenged everything. People thought they knew about disabilities in horses. The story of a blind horse from champion bloodlines, abandoned at birth only to become a pioneer in therapeutic riding, captured imaginations worldwide. Requests for interviews and appearances flooded in, but Tommy remained focused on their mission. The plans for Shadow's path were taking shape, with support pouring in from unexpected sources. The university had secured major grants, and private donors were stepping forward, moved by their story. One donor in particular changed the game entirely. Margaret Wellington, a retired business executive and lifelong equestrian, visited the stable after reading the magazine article. She watched a therapy session with veterans, tears streaming down her face as she saw James Mitchell cantering confidently on Shadow, guided only by voice commands and subtle touch signals. "This isn't just a riding program," Margaret declared. Afterward, "This is revolutionary. You're changing how we think about ability and disability, about potential and limitations." She pulled out her checkbook and wrote a number that made old Joe whistle softly. "Build something extraordinary," she said simply. With Margaret's donation and the university grants, the dream of Shadow's path began to materialize. They found perfect property just outside town, 60 acres of desert landscape with natural features that could be incorporated into their sensory training programs. Architects specializing in accessible design worked with Tommy to create a facility that would serve both horses and humans with special needs. As construction began, Tommy received an unexpected call. A producer from a major television network wanted to feature their story on a prime-time special about innovative therapeutic programs. The exposure would bring national attention to their work, but it also meant confronting their past publicly. "Are you ready for this?" Old Joe asked Tommy. "Once this airs, there's no going back. Sterling will know exactly where his discarded foal ended up." Tommy looked at Shadow, now strong and confident, helping another visually impaired child discover their own strength. "Let him know," he said firmly. "Let everyone know what's possible when you look past surface limitations." The filming process was intense, but rewarding. The crew captured the full scope of their program, from basic training techniques to advanced therapy sessions. They filmed Shadow working with children, veterans, and even other disabled animals who had been brought to learn from their methods. The most powerful segment featured James Mitchell telling his story. "I thought losing my sight meant losing everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But this horse, this amazing animal that society had written off as worthless, showed me that we don't have to be limited by what we've lost. We can build something new, something maybe even more meaningful." As the air date approached, Tommy received another surprising call. Alexander Sterling had learned about the upcoming broadcast and wanted to visit Shadow's Path. The request sent waves of tension through their tight-knit community. Old Joe wanted to refuse, but Tommy saw an opportunity. "Let him come," Tommy said. "Let him see what Shadow has become." The day of Sterling's visit dawned clear and cool. The wealthy rancher arrived in his expensive car, his manner guarded but curious. Tommy met him at the gate, standing tall despite his nervousness. "Show me," Sterling said simply. Tommy led him through the facility, now nearly complete. He explained their training methods, demonstrated their therapy programs, and finally brought him to Shadow's paddock. The horse that Sterling had ordered, abandoned years ago, stood before him, strong and proud. "Would you like to meet him properly?" Tommy asked. Sterling hesitated, then nodded. As he approached Shadow, the horse's ears pricked forward, sensing a new presence. Tommy guided Sterling's hand to Shadow's neck, showing him how to use touch to communicate. "He's remarkable," Sterling admitted quietly. "I was wrong about him, about everything." The moment was captured by the television crew, adding an unexpected dimension to their story. When the special aired, it wasn't just about a boy and his blind horse anymore. It was about the power of second chances, about looking past surface judgments to see true potential. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Shadow's Path became a model for therapeutic riding programs worldwide. Their training methods were adopted by rehabilitation centers and veterinary schools. But more importantly, their story inspired others to challenge preconceptions about disability and potential. One morning, as Tommy arrived at the new facility, he found a letter waiting. It was from Sterling, along with a substantial donation to Shadow's Path. The letter read, "You've taught me that true value isn't measured by conventional standards. What I once saw as a flaw has become a gift to countless others. Thank you for showing me what I couldn't see." Tommy shared the letter with Shadow, who listened with pricked ears as he always did. "We did it, boy," he whispered. "We showed them all what's possible when you believe in something everyone else has given up on." The sun rose over Shadow's Path, illuminating the desert landscape that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving. Now it was a place of healing, of discovery, of transformation. Tommy watched as the day's first visitors arrived. A group of children, some in wheelchairs, others with white canes, all eager to experience the magic that happened when limitations became possibilities. Shadow nickered softly, ready for another day of changing lives. Together, they had created something extraordinary, not despite their challenges, but because of them. Their journey had proven that sometimes the greatest achievements come from the most unexpected beginnings, and that true vision has nothing to do with sight. Shadow's Path had become more than just a therapeutic riding center. It was a beacon of hope that drew people from around the world. One morning, Tommy received an unexpected visitor who would take their mission to an entirely new level. Dr. Isabella Martinez, a pioneering researcher in neuroplasticity, arrived from Spain with an intriguing proposal. "What you've created here is extraordinary," she said, watching Shadow guide a young girl with cerebral palsy through a complex sensory exercise. But I believe we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. Would you be interested in participating in a groundbreaking research project? Dr. Martinez explained her vision. She wanted to study how shadows' adapted sensory abilities could help develop new therapeutic approaches for humans with various disabilities. Her team had developed sophisticated monitoring equipment that could map both horse and human brain activity during their interactions. We might be able to understand exactly how this healing connection works, she explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Imagine being able to replicate these results globally to help millions of people. The project would require Shadow and Tommy to work with an international team of scientists, but it would also provide resources to expand their program in ways they hadn't imagined possible. Old Joe, now serving as Shadow's Path's senior advisor, recognized the opportunity immediately. "This could take everything you've built to the next level," he said, studying the proposal. "But it's your decision, son. You and Shadow have already given so much." Tommy spent that evening in Shadow's paddock, thinking it over. The horse stood quietly beside him, occasionally nuzzling his shoulder in that knowing way he had developed. "What do you think, boy?" Tommy asked softly. "Ready to change the world again?" The research project launched with ambitious goals. Dr. Martinez's team set up a state-of-the-art laboratory at Shadow's Path, complete with advanced imaging equipment and sensory mapping technology. They began documenting every aspect of Shadow's interactions with different groups: children with autism, veterans with PTSD, people recovering from traumatic brain injuries. The results were astounding. The data showed that Shadow's presence had a measurable impact on brain activity patterns in patients. During sessions with him, participants showed increased neural connectivity in areas associated with spatial awareness, emotional regulation, and motor control. It's as if Shadow's adapted nervous system is teaching their brains new ways to process information, Dr. Martinez explained, reviewing the results. He's not just compensating for his blindness. He's developed entirely new neural pathways that we can learn from. The discoveries led to innovations in therapy techniques. Shadow's method of using sound and vibration to navigate inspired new approaches to mobility training for visually impaired people. His reliance on touch and pressure helped develop better physical therapy methods for patients with sensory processing disorders. One breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maya, a 12-year-old girl with severe autism who had never spoken, began making sounds to mimic the gentle nickering Shadow used to communicate with her. Within weeks, she was forming words beginning with horse and friend. Maya's mother, filming her daughter's progress through tears, shared the videos online. They went viral overnight, catching the attention of major medical journals and news organizations. Soon, Shadow's Path was fielding calls from hospitals and research institutions worldwide. The attention brought new challenges and opportunities. A major medical technology company approached them about developing a line of therapeutic devices based on Shadow's sensory training methods. The devices would use similar sound and vibration patterns to help people with various disabilities navigate their environments more effectively. "Think about it," the company's representative explained. "We could help people all over the world, even those who can't come to Shadow's Path. Your work could reach millions." The proposal raised important questions about commercialization and accessibility. Tommy insisted that any products developed must be affordable and available to those who needed them most. His stance impressed the company executives, who agreed to establish a foundation that would provide the devices free of charge to low-income families. As Shadow's Path expanded its reach, Tommy never lost sight of their core mission. Every morning, before the researchers and visitors arrived, he still spent quiet time with Shadow, maintaining their special bond. These moments reminded him that at the heart of all their success was a simple truth: the connection between a boy and a horse who had refused to be limited by their circumstances. The impact of their work continued to ripple outward in unexpected ways. Other stables began adopting their methods, creating their own therapeutic programs. Veterinary schools added courses on working with disabled animals. Medical schools incorporated their findings into rehabilitation therapy training. One day, a group of engineering students from MIT arrived with an unusual project. Inspired by Shadow's story, they had developed a new type of assistive technology, a miniature device that used echolocation principles similar to how Shadow had learned to navigate his world. "We call it the Shadow Sensor," they explained, demonstrating how the small device could help visually impaired people detect obstacles and navigate spaces more effectively. "Your work showed us that sometimes the best solutions come from understanding how nature adapts to challenges." The students worked with Tommy and Shadow to refine their invention, testing different frequencies and feedback methods. The result was a breakthrough in assistive technology that would help thousands of people live more independently. As Shadow's Path approached its second anniversary, they organized a special celebration. Hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by their program gathered to share their stories. James Mitchell, the veteran who had been one of their first participants, gave a moving speech about how Shadow had helped him rediscover his courage. "When I lost my sight, I thought my life was over," he said. "But Shadow and Tommy showed me that every limitation is just an invitation to find a new way forward. They taught me that our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to others." During the celebration, Dr. Martinez unveiled the preliminary results of their research. The data showed significant improvements in participants across all categories: physical mobility, emotional well-being, cognitive function, and social interaction. But the most remarkable findings were in the area of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections. Shadow's adapted nervous system has shown us that the brain is far more adaptable than we ever imagined, she explained. His example is revolutionizing our understanding of rehabilitation and recovery. The event attracted media attention, and reporters asked Tommy about the future of Shadow's Path. Looking around at the thriving center, the research facilities, the therapy programs, the families whose lives had been transformed, he smiled. This was never just about helping one horse, he said. It was about showing the world that our limitations don't define us. Shadow taught me that every challenge is an opportunity to discover new strengths, new ways of connecting, new possibilities for helping others. As if to emphasize the point, Shadow chose that moment to demonstrate one of their newest training techniques. Working with a young boy who had lost both legs in an accident, Shadow moved in perfect synchronization with the child's wheelchair, showing how they had adapted their exercises to include participants with various mobility challenges. The sight brought tears to many eyes. This magnificent horse, once deemed worthless because of his blindness, now leading the way in adaptive therapy and rehabilitation. It was a powerful reminder that value isn't determined by conventional standards, but by the impact we have on others' lives. That evening, as the celebration wound down, Tommy and Shadow stood together in their favorite quiet spot, watching the desert sunset. The boy who had once found a trembling foal in the desert had grown into a young man, and the frightened colt had become a powerful force for healing and hope. "You know what, Shadow?" Tommy said softly, stroking the horse's neck. "Sometimes the things that seem like our biggest weaknesses turn out to be our greatest strengths. You've taught me that it's not about overcoming limitations, it's about transforming them into something beautiful." Shadow nickered softly in response, his ears pricked forward as always, alert to the world he had learned to navigate so masterfully. Together they had not just survived against the odds, they had created something extraordinary, something that would continue to change lives long into the future. As stars began to appear in the desert sky, Tommy reflected on their journey, from those first uncertain days to the thriving center Shadow's path had become. They had proven that the most powerful transformations often begin with a simple act of kindness, and that true vision comes not from our eyes, but from our hearts. The success of Shadow's path attracted attention from an unexpected quarter. The International Paralympic Committee sent representatives to evaluate their program. For a groundbreaking initiative, they envisioned creating a new category of para-equestrian events that would showcase the extraordinary abilities of horses and riders who had overcome various challenges. Sarah Wells, the committee's lead representative, spent a week observing Shadow and Tommy's work. "What you've created here goes beyond traditional therapeutic riding," she explained. "You've developed a whole new approach to human-animal partnership. We believe it's time to bring this to the world stage." The proposal was revolutionary. A series of international exhibitions and competitions specifically designed to showcase adaptive riding techniques. Shadow and Tommy would help develop the guidelines and protocols for these events, ensuring they were both challenging and accessible. "Think about what this could mean," Sarah said, watching Shadow guide a young rider with spina bifida through a complex pattern. "We could create opportunities for people who never thought competitive riding was possible for them." The project sparked intense interest from the equestrian community. Traditional competition organizers, who had once been skeptical of adaptive riding, now sought their input on making events more inclusive. Shadow's path became a training ground for a new generation of riders who refused to be limited by conventional definitions of ability. One such rider was Sophia Patel, a 14-year-old girl born with a rare genetic condition that affected her vision and coordination. Despite her challenges, she had developed an extraordinary connection with horses, particularly after working with Shadow. Under Tommy's guidance, she had learned to ride using many of the same techniques they had pioneered. "Shadow showed me that what others see as disabilities can become unique abilities," Sophia explained to a documentary crew filming their training sessions. "When I'm riding, I don't feel limited. I feel free." The preparation for the first international exhibition brought new challenges and innovations. Tommy worked with engineers to develop specialized equipment that would allow riders with various disabilities to communicate more effectively with their horses. They created adaptive reins with pressure sensors, saddles with enhanced stability, features and communication systems that used vibration and sound Dr. Martinez's research team continued to make breakthrough discoveries. They found that the neural patterns developed by Shadow and his riders showed remarkable similarities, suggesting a deep level of cognitive synchronization during their interactions. It's as if they're creating a shared sensory language, Dr. Martinez explained, reviewing the latest data. This could have profound implications for how we understand communication between species, especially in therapeutic settings. The international exhibition, scheduled to take place in London, would be their biggest challenge yet. Shadow would need to travel overseas, navigate unfamiliar environments, and perform in front of thousands of people. The logistics seemed daunting, but Tommy had learned never to underestimate his remarkable horse. Preparation for the journey began months in advance. They worked with animal behavior specialists to help Shadow adjust to new experiences. The sounds of aircraft, the confined space of a transport carrier, the different acoustics of indoor arenas. Each challenge was met with the same patience and creativity that had characterized their entire journey. During this time, an unexpected visitor arrived at Shadow's path. Elena Rossi, a renowned Italian opera singer who had lost her sight to a degenerative condition, had heard about their program and wanted to contribute something unique. She proposed incorporating music into their exhibition performance. Music transcends visual limitations, Eleanor explained. It can guide, inspire, and connect people in profound ways. I believe it could add another dimension to what you're doing. Working with Elena, they developed a revolutionary performance piece that would combine adaptive riding with live music. Shadow proved remarkably responsive to the vibrations and rhythms of Elena's voice, adjusting his movements to match the musical patterns. The preparation period also brought a surprise reunion. Rodriguez, the former stable hand, who had been forced to abandon Shadow in the desert years ago, reached out after seeing their story in the news. His visit to Shadow's path was emotional for everyone. "I've carried the guilt of that day for years," Rodriguez admitted, tears in his eyes as he watched Shadow perform with a group of young riders. "But look what you've created from that moment of darkness. You've turned an act of cruelty into a force for healing." As the date of the London exhibition approached, Shadow's path became a hive of activity. International media crews documented their preparation. Adaptive sports specialists studied their methods, and supporters from around the world sent messages of encouragement. The journey to London was a testament to careful planning and unwavering trust. Shadow, accompanied by Tommy and their support team, handled the long flight with remarkable composure. His arrival at the historic Olympic equestrian venue created a buzz of excitement among the international equestrian community. The exhibition itself became a landmark event in the history of adaptive sports. Shadow and Tommy performed alongside Sophia and other riders from their program, demonstrating the extraordinary possibilities that emerged when limitations were viewed as opportunities for innovation. Eleanor's voice soared through the arena, guiding the performers through a series of intricate movements that showcased the perfect harmony between horse and rider. The audience, including representatives from royal families and international sports organizations, watched in awe as these remarkable partnerships demonstrated what was possible when trust and determination overcame all barriers. The performance culminated in a powerful moment when all the lights in the arena were dimmed, leaving the audience to experience the world as Shadow did, through sound, touch, and trust. Elena's voice provided the only guidance as the riders navigated a complex pattern in near total darkness. The impact was profound. The International Paralympic Committee immediately announced plans to establish adaptive equestrian events as a regular part of their program. Major equestrian organizations worldwide began developing inclusive competition categories based on Shadow's Path's model. But perhaps the most significant outcome was the wave of hope their performance inspired. Messages poured in from around the globe, from parents of children with disabilities, from rehabilitation centers, from anyone who had ever been told that their dreams were impossible. Back at Shadow's Path, Tommy reflected on how far they had come from those first uncertain days in the desert. Their story had evolved from a simple tale of rescue and rehabilitation into a worldwide movement for inclusion and possibility. "You know what makes this really special?" he asked Dr. Martinez as they watched a new group of riders beginning their training. "It's not just about what we've accomplished. It's about what others will achieve because we showed them it was possible." Shadow's legacy had grown beyond anything they could have imagined. The blind foal, once abandoned as worthless, had become a pioneer, showing the world that perceived limitations could become unique strengths. His journey with Tommy had opened doors for countless others who refused to be defined by their challenges. As the sun set over Shadow's Path, casting long shadows across the desert landscape, Tommy watched his beloved horse moving confidently through his domain. Shadow had not just adapted to his blindness, he had transformed it into a gift that continued to change lives around the world. "Sometimes," Tommy mused, stroking Shadow's neck, "the most beautiful things come from the darkest moments. You just have to have the courage to believe in possibilities that others can't see." Shadow nickered softly in agreement. His ears pricked, forward as always, ready for whatever new adventures awaited them. Together, they had proven that true vision comes not from the eyes, but from the heart, and that every limitation carries within it the seed of an extraordinary gift. The success of the London exhibition catalyzed an unexpected chain of events. One morning, Tommy received a call from the United Nations. They were planning a special summit on innovative approaches to disability inclusion, and they wanted Shadow's Path to be a centerpiece of the discussion. "Your program represents everything we're trying to promote," explained Diana Chen, the UN's Special Rapporteur on Disability Rights. "It's not just about adaptation, it's about transformation. You're showing the world how to turn perceived limitations into unique strengths." The summit would bring together leaders from various fields: healthcare, education, technology, and social services. Shadow's Path would present their methodologies as a model for innovative disability programs worldwide. But what excited Tommy most was the opportunity to connect with other pioneers in the field. Among the summit participants was Dr. Amir Hassan, a neuroscientist who had developed groundbreaking techniques for mapping brain plasticity in children with autism. His work had shown remarkable parallels with the patterns they'd observed in Shadow's development. "What if we combined our approaches?" Dr. Hassan suggested during a preliminary meeting. "Your horse has developed extraordinary ways of processing sensory information. If we could understand and replicate these patterns, we might unlock new possibilities for human neural development." The collaboration led to the creation of the Global Adaptive Learning Initiative, GALI, a multinational research project that would study innovative approaches to working with different abilities. Shadow's Path became the headquarters for this ambitious undertaking. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lily Zhang, a 12-year-old girl with severe autism, had been non-verbal since birth. During her sessions with Shadow, researchers noticed unusual patterns in her brain activity. When Shadow used his distinctive nickering sounds to communicate, Lily's neural patterns shifted to mirror his. "It's as if Shadow is teaching her a new language," Dr. Hassan explained, reviewing the data. "He's showing her that communication doesn't have to follow conventional patterns." Within weeks, Lily began developing her own system of sounds to communicate with Shadow. These vocalizations gradually evolved into recognizable words. Her parents, who had been told she would never speak, watched in amazement as their daughter found her voice through her connection with a blind horse. The implications were profound. Researchers began studying how Shadow's adapted sensory processing might help develop new therapies for various conditions. His ability to create detailed mental maps without visual input offered insights into spatial awareness and cognitive development. One particularly moving development came through their work with veterans suffering from PTSD. James Mitchell, who had been one of their first participants, now led a program specifically designed for former service members. "Shadow taught me that losing one ability doesn't mean you can't develop others," James explained to a group of newly arrived veterans. "Sometimes what we perceive as a weakness becomes our greatest strength." The program's success attracted attention from military rehabilitation centers worldwide. Shadow's Path began training instructors from different countries, spreading their methodology across continents. Each culture added its own insights, enriching the program in unexpected ways. A team of Japanese researchers introduced elements of mindfulness and meditation to the training process. They discovered that the rhythmic sound of Shadow's movement, combined with focused breathing exercises, helped participants achieve deeper states of relaxation and healing. From India came ancient Ayurvedic practices that complemented their sensory training methods. Brazilian capoeira masters contributed insights about movement and balance that enhanced their physical therapy programs. The program became a beautiful fusion of global wisdom and innovative science. The UN summit itself became a landmark event. Tommy, now a poised young man, addressed delegates from around the world. Shadow stood beside him on stage, his presence a powerful testament to their journey. "When I found Shadow in the desert," Tommy began, "people told me I was wasting my time. They said a blind horse could never have a meaningful life. But Shadow taught me that our limitations only define us if we let them. He showed me that sometimes our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to others." The summit led to the establishment of Shadow's Path centers in different countries. Each facility adapted their methods to local needs while maintaining the core principle that every limitation carried within it the seed of unique potential. In Kenya, they worked with communities to develop programs for children affected by river blindness. In India, they helped establish therapeutic riding centers in areas with high rates of visual impairment. Each new center became a beacon of hope and possibility. The technology developed through their program found applications beyond therapeutic riding. The shadow sensor, originally created to help visually impaired people navigate spaces, was adapted for use in disaster relief operations, helping rescue workers navigate smoke-filled buildings or dark caves. But amid all the global expansion and scientific breakthroughs, Tommy never lost sight of the personal transformations that remained at the heart of their work. Each morning, he still spent quiet time with Shadow, maintaining the special bond that had started it all. On such morning, they received an unexpected visitor, a small girl in a wheelchair, accompanied by her mother, had travelled from Australia to meet Shadow. 7-year-old Emma had been told she would never walk, but she refused to accept that limitation. "I saw you on TV," she told Tommy, her eyes bright with determination. "If Shadow can learn to run without seeing, maybe I can learn to walk without feeling my legs." Over the next few weeks, Emma worked with Shadow, developing her own unique approach to movement and balance. She discovered that by focusing on the vibrations she could feel through her chair, she could begin to sense rhythm and pattern in new ways. By the end of her visit, Emma had taken her first assisted steps, supported by a specially designed harness system inspired by Shadow's training methods. The moment was captured on video and quickly went viral, inspiring millions around the world. The story caught the attention of tech innovator Elon Musk, who offered to fund the development of advanced prosthetic systems based on Shadow's sensory processing techniques. The project promised to revolutionize how people with physical disabilities interacted with their environment. As Shadow's Path approached its 5th anniversary, they organized a global celebration connecting all their international centers through live video feeds. Participants from around the world shared their stories of transformation and hope. A young artist from Paris who had lost her sight in an accident described how Shadow had inspired her to develop a new form of tactile art. A former Olympic athlete, paralyzed in a climbing accident, explained how the program had helped him discover new ways to experience movement and competition. During the celebration, Tommy announced their newest initiative, the Shadow Scholarship Foundation. Funded by their various corporate partnerships and private donors, it would provide resources for people with disabilities to access adaptive programs worldwide. Shadow's story began with rejection, Tommy told the gathered crowd, but it has become a testament to the extraordinary potential that lies within every challenge. Each person here carries within them the seed of something remarkable. Our job is simply to help that seed grow. As the sun set on their celebration, Tommy and Shadow stood together in their favorite spot overlooking the desert. The landscape that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving had become a place of healing and transformation. "You know what, Shadow?" Tommy said softly, stroking the horse's neck. "When I found you that day, I thought I was saving you. But the truth is, you've saved so many of us. You've shown us that our challenges don't define us, they refine us." Shadow nickered gently, his ears pricked forward as always, still alert to the world he had learned to navigate so masterfully. Together, they had created something extraordinary. Not just a program or a methodology, but a new way of seeing the world and its possibilities. Their story had become a beacon of hope, proving that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with the courage to believe in possibilities that others can't see. In the end, it wasn't about overcoming limitations. It was about transforming them into gifts that could change the world. The world of therapeutic riding was about to change forever. A breakthrough in genetic research, inspired by shadows. Remarkable adaptation to blindness opened up entirely new possibilities. Dr. Sarah Chen, now leading a team of genetic researchers, had made an astounding discovery while studying Shadow's DNA. His genetic makeup shows unprecedented neural plasticity, she explained during an emergency conference call with Tommy and the Shadow's Path Board. His blindness didn't just force him to adapt, it triggered a complete restructuring of his sensory processing systems. We've never seen anything like it. The implications were staggering. Shadow's unique genetic adaptations suggested possibilities for helping both animals and humans with various sensory challenges. The discovery attracted attention from the world's leading medical institutions, including the Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins. Dr. Chen's team identified specific genetic markers that appeared to facilitate enhanced sensory compensation. This wasn't just about working around blindness. It was about the brain's extraordinary capacity to rewire itself in response to challenges. The findings coincided with another remarkable development. Mia Rodriguez, a 15-year-old girl born without sight, had been working with Shadow for several months. Using the techniques they had developed, she had learned to ride independently, but something unexpected was happening. "I can sense things," Mia tried to explain during one of her sessions. "Not seeing exactly, but it's like I can feel where everything is, like Shadow does. It's as if my brain is painting pictures with sound and touch." Medical scans confirmed what Mia was experiencing. Her brain patterns while riding showed striking similarities to Shadow's adapted neural pathways. She was developing what researchers termed cross-modal sensory integration. Her brain was combining input from multiple senses to create a new way of perceiving the world. The discovery led to the creation of the Advanced Sensory Development Program, ASDP, a revolutionary approach to working with sensory challenges. The program combined Shadow's training methods with cutting-edge neuroscience, helping participants develop enhanced sensory capabilities. One of the first beneficiaries was Marcus Chen, a talented young pianist who had lost his sight in an accident. Traditional rehabilitation had left him discouraged and defeated, but the ASDP offered new hope. "Music has always been my life," Marcus explained during his initial assessment. "Without sight, I felt lost, but Shadow's story made me wonder, what if blindness isn't the end of my journey, but the beginning of a new one?" Working with Shadow and the ASDP team, Marcus discovered that his enhanced auditory perception could extend beyond music. He began developing what he called sonic mapping, using subtle echoes and vibrations to create detailed mental images of his surroundings. The breakthrough attracted attention from unexpected quarters. NASA scientists visited Shadow's Path, intrigued by the possibilities for developing new sensory navigation systems for space exploration. The techniques Shadow had developed for navigating without sight had potential applications for astronauts working in the darkness of space. "What you've discovered here could revolutionize how we think about human adaptation," explained Dr. Jessica Patel, NASA's lead researcher for human factors engineering. "Shadow's methods could help us prepare astronauts for the sensory challenges of long-term space missions." The collaboration with NASA led to the development of the Enhanced Sensory Training Simulator, ESTS, a facility that allowed people to experience and adapt to various sensory challenges. The simulator became an essential tool for training not just astronauts, but also first responders, search and rescue teams, and others who needed to function effectively in challenging sensory environments. Meanwhile, Shadow's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. A group of architects approached Tommy with an innovative proposal. They wanted to apply Shadow's navigation principles to design more accessible buildings and public spaces. Instead of just adding accommodations for people with disabilities, explained Maria Torres, the lead architect, what if we created environments that naturally enhanced everyone's sensory capabilities? The concept led to the development of intuitive architecture, buildings designed to be naturally navigable through sound, texture, and airflow. The first such structure, the new wing of Shadow's Path's International Training Center, became a model for inclusive design worldwide. But amid all the scientific breakthroughs and technological innovations, the most powerful moments remain deeply personal. Like the day Tommy received a letter from Alexander Sterling, the man who had ordered Shadow abandoned years ago. Sterling had been following their progress from afar, watching as the horse he had dismissed as worthless transformed countless lives. His letter was both a confession and a plea. "I've spent years trying to create the perfect horse," Sterling wrote, "but Shadow has shown me that perfection isn't about meeting predetermined standards. It's about discovering the extraordinary potential that lies within our challenges." Sterling's letter came with an unexpected offer. He wanted to donate his entire breeding operation to Shadow's Path to be transformed into a sanctuary for animals with special needs. The facility would become a training ground for veterinarians and animal behaviorists studying adaptive capabilities. The transformation of Desert Wind Ranch into the Shadow Sanctuary marked a powerful symbol of change. The very place where Shadow's story had begun in rejection would now become a center for celebrating and developing unique potential. During the sanctuary's opening ceremony, Tommy stood with Shadow in the same stable where the horse had been born. The moment was captured by photographers and broadcast worldwide, a powerful reminder of how far they had come. "Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a moment of rejection," Tommy told the gathered crowd. "Shadow taught me that our challenges don't define us, they reveal us. They show us what we're truly capable of becoming." The ceremony included a special performance by Marcus Chen, who had composed a piece inspired by his work with Shadow. As his music filled the transformed stable, visitors were invited to close their eyes and experience the world as Shadow did, through sound, touch, and presence. The event attracted participants from Shadow's Path centers around the world. Each brought stories of how Shadow's example had inspired new possibilities in their communities. In Africa, they had developed programs helping children blinded by disease discover new capabilities. In Asia, ancient wisdom about sensory perception was being combined with Shadow's methods to create new therapeutic approaches. One particularly moving moment came when Mia Rodriguez demonstrated her enhanced sensory capabilities. Blindfolded volunteers watched in amazement as she navigated a complex obstacle course using only her developed sense of spatial awareness. "Shadow showed me that blindness isn't about what you can't see," Mia explained. "It's about discovering new ways of seeing. Every limitation is an invitation to develop new strengths. The success of the Shadow Sanctuary led to an expanded vision for Shadow's path. They began developing specialized programs for different species of animals with various challenges. Each animal, like Shadow, revealed new insights about adaptation and potential. A deaf dolphin helped develop new understanding about underwater communication through vibration. A three-legged wolf demonstrated extraordinary balance adaptations that influenced prosthetic design. Each animal became both student and teacher in their growing understanding of adaptive capabilities. As evening fell on the sanctuary's opening day, Tommy and Shadow stood together in the desert twilight. The setting sun painted the sky in colors Shadow couldn't see. But Tommy had learned that beauty wasn't just about visual perception. "You know what amazes me most?" Tommy said softly, stroking Shadow's neck. "It's not just what you've overcome, but what you've helped others discover about themselves. You've shown us that our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to the world." Shadow nickered gently, his ears pricked forward as always, still alert to the world he had learned to navigate so masterfully. Together, they had created something extraordinary, not just a program or a methodology, but a new way of understanding potential. Their story had become a testament to the power of seeing beyond surface limitations to the extraordinary possibilities that lie within every challenge. In transforming their own journey of adversity into a gift for others, they had helped create a world where limitations were no longer seen as endpoints, but as starting points for discovering new ways of being extraordinary. 10 years had passed. Since Tommy first found Shadow in the desert, the abandoned blind foal had not only survived, but had revolutionized how the world viewed ability and potential. As Shadow's path prepared to celebrate its 10th anniversary, a remarkable discovery would provide the perfect culmination to their extraordinary journey. Dr. Isabella Martinez's team had been studying the long-term effects of Shadow's training, methods on human brain development. Their latest research revealed something unprecedented. Participants in their program were developing entirely new neural pathways, ones never before documented in human brain studies. "We're calling it adaptive synesthesia," Dr. Martinez explained during a groundbreaking presentation at the World Neuroscience Congress. These individuals aren't just compensating for sensory limitations. They're creating entirely new ways of perceiving and interacting with the world. The findings caught the attention of the Nobel Committee. Shadow's impact on neuroscience and human development had transcended all expectations. The nomination of Shadow's Path's research team for the Nobel Prize in Medicine marked a historic moment, the first time that work inspired by an animal's adaptation had been considered for this prestigious honor. But the most profound validation came from an unexpected source. A group of young scientists, all of whom had various disabilities, had been inspired by Shadow's story to pursue careers in research. They called themselves the Shadow Scholars, and their work was pushing the boundaries of what was possible in adaptive technology and therapeutic development. Among them was Claire Bennett, a brilliant young researcher who had been born blind. Using insights gained from Shadow's methods, she had developed a revolutionary neural interface that allowed blind individuals to see through patterns of electrical stimulation to the brain. Shadow showed us that limitation is just an invitation to innovation, Claire explained during the device's first public demonstration. "We're not trying to replicate traditional sight. We're creating new ways of experiencing the world. The success of Claire's innovation led to the establishment of the Shadow Innovation Lab, a state-of-the-art research facility dedicated to developing adaptive technologies. The lab brought together scientists, engineers, and individuals with various disabilities to collaborate on groundbreaking solutions. One of their most promising projects came from the unlikely collaboration between James Mitchell, the veteran who had been one of Shadow's first students, and Sophia Patel, now a talented biomedical engineer. Together, they developed what they called the Shadow Sync system, a neural interface that could help individuals with various disabilities develop enhanced sensory capabilities similar to those Shadow had naturally evolved. What makes this system unique, Sophia explained, is that it doesn't try to fix what's broken. Instead, it helps the brain develop new ways of processing sensory information, just as Shadow taught us. The technology caught the attention of major medical centers worldwide. Clinical trials showed remarkable results, with participants developing capabilities that defied traditional medical understanding. People with various sensory limitations were discovering new ways to perceive and interact with their environment. Meanwhile, Shadow's influence continued to expand in unexpected directions. The United Nations adopted the Shadow Protocol, a set of guidelines for inclusive development based on the principles developed at Shadow's Path. The protocol emphasized seeing disability not as a limitation to be overcome, but as an opportunity for innovation and new understanding. The transformation of Alexander Sterling, the man who had once ordered Shadow abandoned, became a powerful symbol of this new perspective. Sterling had dedicated his remaining years to transforming his vast network of racing stables into rehabilitation centers for animals with special needs. Shadow didn't just prove me wrong, Sterling admitted during the 10th anniversary celebration. He showed me a whole new way of seeing value and potential. Every animal I once would have discarded now represents an opportunity to discover something extraordinary. The celebration itself became a showcase of how far they had come. Participants from Shadow's Path, centers around the world, demonstrated the incredible capabilities they had developed. Blind riders performed complex dressage patterns guided by sound and touch. Children with autism demonstrated remarkable emotional connections with animals once considered difficult. But perhaps the most touching moment came when Tommy introduced a new program called Shadow's Legacy. The initiative would identify abandoned or disabled animals and pair them with children facing similar challenges. Each pair would work together to discover their unique potential, just as Tommy and Shadow had done. The first participant in the program was a young girl named Hope, who had lost her sight in the same accident that had killed her parents. She had been paired with a blind dolphin rescued from a marine park that had planned to euthanize it. When I lost my sight, I thought, my world had ended, Hope told the gathered crowd, her voice strong and clear. But Shadow's story showed me that sometimes what we think is an ending is really a beginning. My dolphin friend is teaching me new ways to experience joy, new ways to connect with the world. As the celebration continued, Dr. Martinez shared one final discovery that brought their journey full circle. Their research had shown that Shadow's genetic adaptation to blindness hadn't been a random mutation. It was a deliberate evolutionary response that had unlocked extraordinary potential. Shadow's blindness wasn't a defect, she explained. It was a catalyst for developing capabilities that might never have emerged otherwise. He's showing us that what we perceive as limitations might actually be nature's way of pushing us to evolve in remarkable new directions. This understanding led to the establishment of the Evolution of Potential Institute, a research center dedicated to studying how various challenges could serve as catalysts for human and animal development. The institute would bring together experts from multiple disciplines to explore how limitations could be transformed into unique capabilities. As the sun set on their 10th anniversary celebration, Tommy and Shadow stood together in their favorite spot, overlooking the desert. The landscape had changed over the years, with new facilities and research centers dotting the horizon, but the essential truth they had discovered remained the same. "You know what, Shadow?" Tommy said softly, his hand resting on the horses. "When I found you that day, everyone said I was crazy to think a blind horse could have a meaningful life. But you didn't just survive. You showed us all a new way of seeing the world." Shadow nickered gently. His ears pricked forward as always, still alert to the world he had learned to navigate so masterfully. Together, they had created something far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Not just a program or a methodology, but a new understanding of human and animal potential. Their journey had proven that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as challenges, and that what others see as limitations can become catalysts for extraordinary transformation. Shadow, the blind foal once abandoned as worthless, had become a pioneer in showing the world that true vision comes not from the eyes, but from the heart's ability to see possibilities where others see only limitations. As stars began to appear in the desert sky, Tommy reflected on how their story had touched millions of lives around the world. But perhaps the most profound truth was the simplest, that sometimes the greatest act of courage is believing in possibilities that others can't see, and that every limitation carries within it the seed of an extraordinary gift waiting to be discovered. The legacy they had created would continue to evolve and grow, inspiring future generations to look beyond surface limitations to the extraordinary potential that lies within every challenge. In the end, Shadow's story wasn't just about overcoming blindness. It was about showing the world a new way of seeing, one that recognized that our greatest challenges often become our greatest gifts to the world. The success of Shadow's path had inspired a new generation of innovators and dreamers. Among them was Maya Chen, Dr. Chen's 16-year-old daughter, who had grown up watching Shadow's extraordinary journey. She had inherited her mother's scientific mind and Tommy's compassionate heart, and she was about to take their work in an unexpected new direction. Maya had been studying the genetic markers that had made Shadow's adaptation possible, but with a different focus. She believed these same principles could help children with developmental challenges unlock hidden potential. Working with a team of young researchers in the Shadow's Path youth program, she had made a breakthrough. "It's not just about compensating for limitations," Maya explained during a presentation to the Shadow's Path board. "We're discovering that every challenge creates unique neural pathways. These pathways can actually enhance other abilities in ways we never imagined." Her research had identified what she called adaptive acceleration, the way certain challenges could actually speed up the development of other capabilities. She had documented cases where children with various disabilities had developed extraordinary abilities in other areas, following patterns similar to Shadow's adaptation. The discovery led to the creation of the Youth Potential Project, YPP, a revolutionary program that helped young people with various challenges discover and develop their unique capabilities. The project quickly attracted attention from educational institutions worldwide. One of their first success stories was Carlos Rivera, a 12-year-old boy with severe dyslexia. Traditional education had left him frustrated and discouraged, but the YPP helped him discover an extraordinary ability to understand and create complex three-dimensional structures in his mind. Shadow showed us that different isn't disabled. Carlos explained to a group of visiting educators, "My brain works differently, but that's not a weakness. It's just a different way of being strong." Carlos's ability led to innovations in architectural design and virtual reality programming. His unique way of processing information helped develop new approaches to spatial design that would benefit everyone, not just those with learning differences. The YPP's success caught the attention of the World Health Organization. They saw potential applications for helping children in developing countries who had experienced trauma or developmental challenges. Shadow's Path began partnering with international aid organizations to bring their programs to communities around the world. In Kenya, they worked with children who had lost their sight to preventable diseases. In Syria, they helped young refugees process trauma through animal-assisted therapy. Each new application of their methods revealed new possibilities for human development. One particularly inspiring development came through their work with twin sisters in India. Priya and Dia had been born with different challenges. Priya was deaf, and Dia had cerebral palsy. Together, they developed a unique form of communication that combined movement and vibration, inspired by Shadow's methods. "We don't try to be like everyone else," Priya signed during a virtual presentation to other YPP participants. "We create our own way of doing things, just like Shadow did." The twins' innovation led to the development of new communication tools that could help people with various disabilities connect with each other and the world. Their work attracted attention from technology companies interested in developing more inclusive communication systems. Meanwhile, Tommy had been working on expanding Shadow's Legacy program, which paired special needs animals with children facing similar challenges. The program had grown to include not just horses, but a variety of animals, each bringing unique insights to their understanding of adaptation and potential. One remarkable partnership was between a young girl named Luna, who had lost her legs in an accident, and a dolphin named Echo, who had been born without a tail fin. Together, they developed new ways of moving through water that challenged traditional understanding of mobility. "Echo showed me that there's no wrong way to swim," Luna explained during a demonstration at the Shadow's Path Aquatic Center. "We just had to find our own rhythm, our own way of moving." Their work caught the attention of Paralympic swimming officials, who began studying their techniques to develop new categories of competition that would be more inclusive of different abilities. The influence of Shadow's Path was continuing to expand in unexpected ways. The scientific community remained fascinated by the ongoing discoveries emerging from their research. Dr. Martinez's team had identified what they called the shadow effect, the way certain limitations could trigger unprecedented neural development in other areas. "What we're learning challenges everything we thought we knew about human potential," Dr. Martinez explained during a TED Talk that went viral. Every person we work with shows us new possibilities for human adaptation and growth. The impact extended beyond individual development. Architects began incorporating principles from the shadow effect into design, creating spaces that naturally enhanced human sensory capabilities. Educational systems started adopting their methods, moving away from standardized approaches toward more individualized development paths. One day, as Tommy watched Maya working with a group of young researchers, he reflected on how far they had come. The abandoned foal he had found in the desert had sparked a revolution in human potential. And now a new generation was taking that work in directions he had never imagined. "You know what amazes me most," he said to Shadow, who still accompanied him everywhere. "It's not just what we discovered, it's what others are discovering because of what you showed us was possible." The horse nickered softly, his coat now showing touches of grey, but his spirit as strong as ever. Together, they had started something that would continue to grow and evolve long after them, touching lives in ways they could never have imagined. As part of their ongoing evolution, Shadow's Path launched the Future Pioneers Initiative, a program that identified and supported young innovators who were developing new approaches to human potential. The initiative provided resources and mentoring to help these young visionaries bring their ideas to life. One of their first supported projects came from a 14-year-old girl in Brazil who had developed a musical method for teaching mathematics to children with learning differences. Another came from a young boy in Japan who had created a new form of martial arts that could be practiced by people with various physical challenges. Shadow taught us that limitation is just the beginning of innovation, Maya told a group of young pioneers. Each of you has the potential to discover something extraordinary, something that could change lives around the world. The gathered young innovators represented a new chapter in the Shadow's Path story. They were taking the fundamental lessons of Shadow's journey, that limitations could become unique strengths, that different wasn't disabled, that every challenge carried the seed of extraordinary potential, and applying them in new and exciting ways. As Tommy watched these young pioneers share their ideas and dreams, he remembered the frightened boy he had been, leading a blind foal through the desert. He could never have imagined then how far that journey would take them, or how many lives would be touched by their story. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a moment of compassion, he told the young innovators. Shadow taught me that. He showed me that when we look past surface limitations to see the potential within, we don't just change one life. We create ripples that can transform the world. The sun was setting over Shadow's path, painting the desert sky in colors that Shadow couldn't see, but could somehow sense, just as he had learned to sense so many things that others thought impossible. Together, they had created something that would continue to grow and evolve, touching lives and transforming limitations into possibilities for generations to come. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.